Now, how is it possible that the worst crime in American history has never been properly investigated?
You said they intend to bring us down in the middle of New York City? What if there is no bomb?
Well, how are they going to bring it down?
The same way a dead man can drive a car.
What do you mean, no bomb?
Langley, I need you to hack into the aircraft's onboard navigation system. We need to know...
It is what it looks like.
What does what look like?
Modem protocols. Remote access. Somebody on the ground's flying your plane.
Bogey, sir.
Keep your course. We need to know our flight plan.
I'm mapping the data now.
Byers, your flight's gonna make an unscheduled stop in exactly 22 minutes.
Corner of Liberty and Washington. Lower Manhattan.
World Trade Center. We're going to crash the plane into the World Trade Center.
I'll tell the flight crew.
Langley, can you override the flight control system?
I'm working on it.
Episode. Tell us about that plot.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a pilot episode for The Lone Gunman, where the basic plot was the gunman had to stop a plane from flying into the World Trade Center 8 months before it actually happened. So when we got the script, it said, you know, plane, World Trade Center. They filmed an entire airplane. They had a green matte screen, so they put the shot of the New York skyline in with the plane flying directly at it. And just seconds before we get computer control, we get it back to the pilots, and the pilots can pull the plane up and avoid hitting the World Trade Center. And part of that plot was that, as it said in the script, that this was to start an international war on terror. That this was, you know, the Cold War's over, and that for the arms race to continue and keep the economy going, that they would start an international war on terror by flying the plane into the World Trade Center.
We know it's a war game scenario, that it has to do with airline counterterrorism. Why is that important enough to kill for?
Because it's no longer a game.
If some terrorist group wants to act out this scenario, why target you for assassination?
Depends on who your terrorists are.
The men who conceived of it in the first place. You're saying our government plans to commit a terrorist act against a domestic airline?
There you go. Indicting the entire government as usual. It's a faction. A small faction.
For what possible gain?
The Cold War's over, John. But with no clear enemy to stockpile against, the arms market's flat. But bring down a fully loaded 727 into the middle of New York City, and you'll find a dozen tin pot dictators all over the world just clamoring to take responsibility and begging to be smart bombed.
I can't believe it. This is about increasing arms sales.
Mm-hmm.
When?
Tonight?
Chris Carter and others, I mean, was that storyline planted on them? Where did they get that?
They said they got it from a Tom Clancy novel. I forget which one.
Which it's admitted that Tom does get that from the intelligence agency.
So it probably was then second or third hand. But
there's a drill to make everybody stand down, but his book doesn't do that. That part was added. I mean, I tell you, the mathematical chance of that happening.
After 9/11, we were told that we were attacked by Islamic radicalists who hated America because we were free, essentially. That was their basic explanation for what happened on the day. That, even on the day, didn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. However, in the course of my own investigations into 9/11, I came across Project for a New American Century's document called Rebuilding America's Defenses, in which they lay out basically a plan for establishing, you know, American hegemony going into the next 3 or 4 decades. And they say at the end of the document that a new Pearl Harbor would advance and expedite that agenda. This is a year before 9/11. After 9/11, you have the unfolding of that very same agenda. 9/11 could arguably have been that new Pearl Harbor event which they invoked, which they themselves said would help them expedite their plans and their agenda. So this is an issue that should concern all Americans.
All this list of things it wants to happen would be likely to be a long one
absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor.
It was ordered by them.
And who's the shadow government?
And that it was executed then by the intelligence services. I mean, we've had a former Italian president, Francesco Cossiga, has stated that he believed it was a joint operation between the CIA and Mossad. Also, former the German Secretary of Defense has stated he believed it was a joint operation between the Mossad and the CIA. And
with a view to doing what?
Apparently it's common knowledge within the intelligence services that it was what they call a false flag operation.
With a view to doing what? What's the ultimate aim?
To succor the American people and their allies into another illegal, unjust war.
And who benefits from that?
War is hugely profitable, okay? Hugely profitable. So if you're able to dominate the natural resources of the country, the oil, and also the opium trade in Afghanistan, okay, there's a hugely lucrative industry there.
They create order out of the chaos they create. Basically what they do is they take a stable society of individuals who are doing their own thing, they're making a little love, making a little money, making a few mistakes, and living within a given system. Then they introduce radical changes to that system. They introduce radical new ideas.
Our enemy is a radical network of terrorists and every government that supports them.
They introduce radical new threats.
The people of the United States and our friends and allies will not live at the mercy of an outlaw regime that threatens the peace with weapons of mass murder. We will meet that threat now with our Army, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, and Marines, so that we do not have to meet it later with armies of firefighters and police and doctors on the streets of our cities.
And they get all the people prepared to make entirely new decisions and think in entirely new ways that facilitate more plans for more control by the people at the top.
You're free, and freedom is beautiful. And, you know, it'll take time to restore chaos and order, order out of chaos, but we will.
You're free, and freedom is beautiful. And you know it'll take time to restore chaos and order out of chaos, but we will. He was quoting the 33rd degree motto, order out of chaos, or as I've dubbed it, problem, reaction, solution. Simple, devastating, played on us by the day.
Think about that, endless war, and a continual rollback in civil liberties that seems to have no end in sight. And yet 9/11 remains the least examined tragedy in modern American history. Americans would never have agreed to the last two wars and the Patriot Act's disturbing policy had it not been for the events of 9/11 as described by our government. There are many disturbing issues around the events of 9/11 that have yet to be examined in any meaningful way by our media, by our Congress, and most especially by the ridiculous 9/11 Commission.
How do you pull that off in this day and age? Well, according to them, you do it in 4 steps. First, we must control the world's oil, especially the oil in Central Asia and the Middle East. Now, I don't have to remind you that Bush Cheney, they came to power with plans already made to attack Afghanistan and Iraq. Number 2, we have to make huge technological advances with our armed forces that for some reason include the capability to fight wars from outer space. Number 3, surprise, surprise, huge increases in military spending to pay for the above, $130 billion a year worth. Now, never mind the sick and dying first responders, 9/11's heroes, who can't even pay their light bill, let alone their medical bills, and a lot of whom are ending up homeless because of it. I guess there's just not enough room in the budget for them. Number 4, and this is key, we changed the definition of preemptive attack so we can unilaterally bomb the shit out of, invade, and occupy countries even if they pose no credible threat or had nothing to do with 9/11. One problem, how are you going to put it into action? I mean, the American people are never going to go for no shit like that, right? You're damn straight. Now what you need is an event that gets everyone's heads turned around the right way. What you need is a new Pearl Harbor. That's what they said they needed. Now you're looking at a guy who went to 58 funerals in 26 days. I can tell you that is sure as shit what they got.
You know, the American people really need to wake up and understand that, you know, we've been lied to, and now is the time for us, for we the people, to really stand up and say, we're not going to take it anymore. We want the answers. We want a real investigation of what happened on 9/11.